Hi everyone, I'm Andrea Lecubier from MG2Mix. I'm ruminant nutritionist, and today we will discuss about intestinal acidosis, what a issue in cattle. So first, we will speak about how to improve gut health and why is it important in cattle. And the idea of this training is how to manage the gut pH and the inflammation with two products, Natubuff and Carbofix. So, while speaking about intestinal acidosis, so first we'll make some definition and find the origin of this trouble and why is it important in ruminants. And after we'll speak about how working on gut health. So with feed management, additive solution like Natubuff and Carbofix. So, intestinal health, why is it important? So, gut health is had a really good important impact on the health of the animal. So, the management of the intestinal health is really important because the intestine is really important for digestive function, microbiota equilibrium in this area, and also it's really important to work on mucus integrity. So first, in digestive function, the intestine is the place to absorb nutrients. So if you have damage on this area, we will have a reduction of the nutrient absorption. So as nutrients, we have amino acid, vitamin, trace element, and second fermented VFA. Also, something really important in the digestive function of the gut is the pH-dependent enzymes that need the right range to work and the right range of pH. So if we are not in the good way, in the good range, we will have trouble and the enzyme will reduce their activity. So also for the microbiota of the intestine, it's really important because bacteria development depend on the intestine pH, and 15% of VFA of total VFA produced by the animal are produced in the intestine. So it's really important to have a good pH range, to have the good bacteria to produce VFA and have a good energy valorization of the ration. Also, it's really important for mucus integrity because the mucus is really important to facilitate nutrient absorption because it will increase the time of contact between enzyme and substrate. So you will have a better activity of your enzyme, and so you will increase the nutrient disponibility of the food, and also you will increase the nutrient absorption. And to finish, it's really important to have for the human response during the bacterial challenge. So the human cell will be in the mucus, and the mucus is really important for the human response. So what is subacute? So just to make a focus on the trouble of intestinal acidosis, we need to come back to the origin, and the origin of this intestinal acidosis is SARA. So subacute ruminal acidosis, and this is the most famous issue in dairy cattle. So first, a little definition of SARA. SARA is a lot of different definition, but for today we will just focus on one definition, and this definition is if the rumen pH is under 5.5 more than 180 minutes, 80 minutes a day. So, and the question is how we can be in SARA in dairy cattle. So more and more we increase the production of animals, more and more we need to find feed efficiency, and to increase feed efficiency. One great strategy is to replace the fiber by fermentable carbohydrate in the ration. So we will concentrate the TMR on energy content. So for example, we will have now in ration, to compare with ration in 19th, we have less PE and DF and more concentrate in ration. So we increase a lot the possibility to produce VFA in short time after the meal. So this the consequences is the reduction of the pH. So after a meal, the pH goes down a little bit higher with high concentrate ration. So What are the consequences of SARA? So we all know that SARA are a lot of consequences. The first one is decrease the pH in all the digestive tract. So you will have less pH in the rumen, induce less pH after. So it means that you will have less pH in the intestine. Also for SARA, one of the most famous consequences is laminitis. So we will have more laminitis in condition of SARA, and this comes from production of toxin by the microbiota, and this alter vessel and cause damage in leg region, and so you will have more laminitis. That's why you will have more laminitis in condition of SARA. And also we can have more displaced abomasum because we reduce the part of fiber in the ration. We will have less fiber fiber mat a little bit smaller in the rumen, and this increase the place of for a displaced abomasum. So we will have more space around the rumen, and this means that some other organ can move and the abomasum can be displaced. Also, another trouble with SARA is loss of body condition score unexplained or and fatty liver. So the reduction of VFA production from the rumen increase the negative energy balance, and this is why we can focus on certain loss of BCAs for any reason. Also, last consequences of SARA is loss of fat in milk. So you will have a change of VFA profile produced in the rumen, and you will, for example, you will have more propionate production and less acetate and butyrate, and this will reduce the de novo synthesis of fat in the udder. So you will decrease the fat in the milk. Also, we can see some changes in the rumen microbiota. We will have less beneficial bacteria and more pathogenic bacteria in the rumen, and we have more toxin produced, and we will find more LPS in the rumen and in the intestine. And this consequence is an increase of inflammation. So, and the last one, and not the least, with intestinal acidosis, is that we will find more fermentable carbohydrate in the intestine. It's because and this will change the change of microbiota in the rumen will reduce the digestibility of certain carbohydrates, and we will find it more in the intestine. So, what are the conclusions about SARA? So, the SARA will have an impact on the production. So, we will produce less milk by kilogram of dry matter intake. So, we will reduce the feed efficiency of the animal. We will have less fat in the milk, and this can be really important for butter production or for cheese for production. And we can have also more risk of immune depression. So, we will have higher cell count in the milk. And also we have some impact on the digestive tract. So we will have less pH in the digestive tract. So it means less pH in the intestine. And we will have a more fermentable carbohydrate in the intestine. So this will have a really great impact on intestine integrity. So now to make a focus on intestinal acidosis, we see that in the intestine we can have some acid production in the intestine. Just to make a focus, we see that in SARA we have more carbohydrates, and moreover we will have more starch in the intestine that will come in the intestine. And we know that in the intestine we have low capacity of amylolytic enzyme, and this means that you will have a great part of starch can be degraded by bacteria. And this starch will be fermented by bacteria in the rumen, and this fermentation will produce acid in the intestine, and this will decrease the intestine pH. And also, to compare with the rumen, we do not have capacity of buffering in the intestine, and this is a bad trouble because we will have we will not because we can't buffer the pH. If the pH is low, the pH will stay low all along the intestine. So it's really important to know this, because in the rumen with salivary recycling of soda, we can manage a little bit the pH. In intestine, if the pH is too low, it will be stay low all along the intestine. So we are in acidosis condition of intestinal condition when the pH in the intestine is under 6.6 or under 6, and this means intestinal acidosis. So now we will speak about intestinal acidosis and what are the impact of intestinal acidosis. So when we are in intestinal condition of acidosis with a pH under 6.6 or under 6.0, you need to know that the epithelium cell are much more sensitive to low pH, and we will have a loss of intestinal integrity. So we will have damage on the intestinal cells. And between the different cells, you will have normally you will have tight junction, really tight, but here there will be less tight, and this can increase the translocation of toxin. Also, we will have more secretion of mucus because the mucus will be damaged by the acid, and so the cells will need to increase the synthesis of mucus. So we will have a loss of nutrient because cell will use nutrient to make mucus. And so with intestinal acidosis, we also will have nutrient trouble in nutrient digestibility, because we change of pH condition, we will change the activity of certain pH dependent enzyme. As I said before, certain enzyme need a really short range of pH to work, and if you are not in the good range of pH, this enzyme will not be efficient. So you will reduce the nutrient degradation by this enzyme because you will not be on the same on the right pH range. And also you will have damage on epithelium cells that will reduce the size of villosity. And if you reduce the size of villosity, you will decrease the absorption capacity in the intestine. So you will decrease the nutrient absorption in intestinal acidosis condition. And also the pH can have an impact on solubility of certain nutrients and can be reduced, as minerals can be also can be less soluble in acid pH, and this will reduce their absorption. So it's really important to know this. So in intestinal acidosis, we will also have some other damage. We can make a focus on microbiota changes in intestine in acidosis condition, because when you give high cereal jet, you will reduce the number and the diversity of bacteria. So you will have less bacteria, beneficial bacteria, and you will have more pathogenic bacteria. And as said late in 2006, more you will have diversity of strains of bacteria, and much more you will have a better feed efficiency. For inflammatory response to intestinal acidosis, more you will have pathogen bacteria in the intestine, and more you will increase the quantity of endotoxin produced in the intestine. And as say change et al. In 2015, more translocation of toxin in the intestine, you will have more translocation of toxin in low pH, and this increase of toxin in the region of intestine will after come in through the blood, and this will have a response of the organism, and you will have more interleukin production. So you will increase the inflammation in this condition. So you will have an inflammation in the intestine area. So now we'll focus on how working to reduce intestinal acidosis. the requirements for to reduce intestinal acidosis are the same to reduce SARA, because if you have SARA, you will have intestinal acidosis, and you just make a focus on the DMI. So if you maximize the DMI with a full rumen anytime and not have peak of spike of ingestion, you will reduce spike of VFA production in the rumen. So it will be a better a pH much more homogeneous on the day, and also you can work on particle sizes. So you need to have a good size of particle, like in this picture, to have a good rumination and a good soda recycling by the saliva. Also, something really important is to work on the NDF, on the fiber. We need to be over 36% per kilogram of dry matter intake of NDF, because fiber mean rumination, and rumination mean increase of the pH. Also, to reduce VFA production in the rumen, you can manage the starch intake and manage the profile of starch. Much more, you will have corn in your ration, and it will be better because you will have bypass starch, and this will reduce the spike of VFA just after meal. So you will decrease the time under with a pH under 5.5. So it's really important to work on the profile of starch and reduce barley and wheat starch, and prefer corn starch. Also, something really interesting in case of acidosis is to work on the protein level. It's really important to be between 15 and 17 crude protein percent per kilogram of dry matter intake, because protein can be a buffer. So if much more, you will have a better level of protein, and it will be better for the animal, because it will buffer a little bit the VFA production. And something that we can forget is the water availability. You really need 10 centimeters per dairy cows per 10 centimeters per cows in your build, because the water pH is 7, and if cows do not have a free access to fresh water, they can't buffer the rumen with water at pH 7. So now we will make a focus on new solution to work against to fight against SARA. So here we'll present you the Natubuff. The Natubuff is a really good buffering subject, and we will see in this survey that it will have a long-term effect and an effect on in the rumen and also in the intestine. So as we said before, we will not have an effect. We will not have a way to buffer the animal don't produce a buffer in the intestine. So if you have a long-term buffer, it will have an impact in the pH in the rumen, but also in the intestine. So it's really interesting to have a long-term effect of buffer. So here the Natubuff is here in green. So what is Natubuff? Natubuff is a mix of different raw materials. Here you have in different colors, you will have different raw materials. In blue here, these two raw materials, and this one, this blue, this water blue, is lithotanium. So as we can compare, different type of lithotanium do not have the same buffering action. We can also discuss about sodium carbonate here in orange, that have a good buffering effect and a long-term effect. But we can also speak about calcium carbonate or Oyster or eggshell. So here we have a good raw material with a long-term effect. And the interest of Natubuff is to have a really good composition and a really good incorporation of these different type of raw material, and to have a really good impact on the pH first, and also have a long-term effect, and this will increase the pH in the rumen and also in the intestine. So with this composition and this specific mix of different buffer, we'll have a long-term effect and a high buffer power than to compare with sodium bicarbonate that can have some trouble with bad silage. We can also work on NatuBuff that have a better buffer effect, and also don't have impact with mix with acetate that will make detergent, but it's another topic. So for the NatuBuff, how can we use it? So for dairy cattle, the recommendation is 100 to 200 grams. It will depend on the level of starch or fiber of your ration. But just to make a comparison, if you use actually 300 grams of soda in the ration, you only need 130 grams of NatuBuff per dairy cows per day. So you will decrease the intake, and you will have a better efficiency against acid. For beef cattle, the intake is a little bit lower. It's between 50 and 80 grams per animal per day. And for small ruminants, it's between 25 to 30 grams per animal per day. So why it's interesting to work with NatuBuff is because NatuBuff, it's a really good buffering ruminal environment, and you will have a long-term buffering effect with complementary of different type of buffer, and this will ensure the most stable intestine environment. So also it will increase the dry matter intake, because you will increase the palatability of the ration, and also you can increase the DCAD of the ration, so you will increase the intake by the animal, the voluntary intake. And also it can be a good ruminal microflora support to boost rumen microflora, because with minerals intake. And the second product is Carbofix. What is Carbofix? It's thermostructured charcoal, and this will help to toxin evacuation. So as we said, we have endotoxin produced during intestinal acidosis and SARA, and Carbofix will help to block this endotoxin. So what is Carbofix? Carbofix is a black amorphous form of carbon made by heating wood and or other organic matter in absence of air. So we have different type of charcoal. We have combustion charcoal that you can use for a barbecue, and also we have activated charcoal, like we can use in cosmetic, drugs, or in animal nutrition. So what is Carbofix? Carbofix is a specific whole tree called marine, and it's not toxic for animals, and it comes from wood from barrel production. So it's a really typical charcoal. And this product is natural and organic raw materials, and this can be EcoCert certificated. So just to compare with different type of charcoal, at the top of this picture, this slide, you will have activated charcoal, and the difference between Carbofix and activated charcoal is the size of the pore. So the size of pore with activated charcoal can be able to absorb wide spectrum of molecule, especially small and like vitamin or trace elements with a little size of pore. To compare, Carbofix, because of its large pore, are able to absorb bigger molecule than activated charcoal. You can see here in the two pictures, because we have larger pores, we will increase the size of molecules that we can bind. And just to compare, here we have a comparison of the capacity of absorption of activated charcoal at the bottom and Carbofix at the top, and it's compared to the size of different molecules that we can find in the intestine. And so for the Carbofix, we can bind from mycotoxin size to bacteria, so we have a large range of absorption, but we have a good absorption for big molecules. we will not have an impact on vitamin and medicine to compare with activated charcoal that can be bind with vitamin or medicine. So you will reduce the efficiency of certain medicine, and you will also reduce the feed efficiency of certain vitamins. So it's really important to make a difference between activated charcoal and Carbofix, because the size of pore will after have an impact on the absorption of different molecules. So that's why it's really important to manage this. It's because in nutrient absorption, we will not have an impact with Carbofix on vitamin absorption or on trace elements. And just to make a focus and have just a look about Carbofix mode of action. So it's like activated charcoal, but it will be only focused on certain bacteria and toxins. So it will be bind in toxin produced by endotoxin produced by pathogen bacteria, and this will decrease the inflammation in the intestine. So you will decrease the inflammation because you will bind to endotoxin that will not have an impact and not be translocate from the lumen to the intestine to the blood, and this will help to reduce the inflammation. And also Carbofix will have an impact and will select some bacteria. As we said before, it will have the pore will have the size to block certain type of bacteria, and this will help to select some bacteria, so reduce the proportion of pathogenic bacteria and increase the level, increase the bacteria that can be produce butyrate. And the butyrate is really important to increase the size of velocity, so we will increase the surface of the absorption of the intestine, and also we will increase the size of the mucosa, the mucus. And the mucus is really important because it's the first barrier, the first physical barrier against digestive pathogens. So we will increase the intestinal health with charcoal. And just to finish, to make a conclusion, we make a little cross of these two solutions regarding different type of ration. So we have here 4 ration, and the 2 first are for dairy cattle with high production cows at the left, and at the right we will have high risk of acidosis ration, and at the right we will have 2 ration for beef cattle with high level of growth, so good productivity, and for the other one with high risk of acidosis. So in situations that we are in high milk yield, the concentration of the ration with protein and energy will be really good. Will be over 16% of protein content in the ration. For NDF, we will be around 36%, so it's really interesting. And for starch, we will be at high level, but not too high level, because we'll be around 32%. And for this type of ration, we are not in intestinal acidosis, so we will not see symptoms. But to have a good management of the intestinal integrity and to increase the nutrient absorption, we can give some NaturBuff to buffer a little bit the acid in the rumen, and always stay in a good range of pH in the rumen and in the intestine. So we can be at a dosage of 130 grams per animal per day. And just to have a good integrity and to conserve a good integrity of intestinal health and a good mucosa production, we can give around 20 grams of Carbofix per animal per day. In risk of acidosis, the profile of ration is a little bit different. We will have a higher level of intake of starch. We will be between, for example, 35 and 36, and we can see pathogenic signs in the animal. So we can see liquid feces with mucosa in the feces. So in this case, if you look at the feces and you see mucosa, you need to increase the NaturBuff intake regarding the high production level. We will be at 180 grams per animal per day, well, between 180 and 200. For Carbofix to bind to endotoxin, we need to be around 50 grams per animal per day. For beef cattle with high level of growth, the level of starch is much more important than to compare with dairy cow. But in this level, we do not need to have a high level of Naturebuff or Carbofix because we just need to manage the gut health. So we need to be around 90 grams per animal per day to Naturebuff just to buffer the rumen and the intestine, and to have a good health. Gut health, we need around 10 grams of Carbofix. And just to finish, with high risk of acidosis in beef cattle ration, the composition will be over 42% of starch and a really low level of NDF will be under 28. And in this case, the intestinal acidosis symptom will be a high level of mortality due to Clostridium perfringens enterotoxemia. So in this case, if you have a high level of enterotoxemia in beef cattle, you need to be between 110 and 120 grams per animal per day of Naturebuff to have a good buffering impact and a better level of rumen pH and intestinal pH. And also, just to reduce the production of endotoxin from Clostridium perfringens, you need to securize the intake of Carbofix at a dosage of 20 grams per animal per day. So thank you for your attention, and now it's place to question.